In order to figure out the quadrant where theta is, we're going to use this little chart where we have our letters memorized, A, S, T, C. And remember that these letters stand for what is positive in each quadrant. So I want to go through and just review that. So the A stands for all. And what that means is that every single function is positive in quadrant 1. So it doesn't matter what they give us in quadrant 1, it's always positive. The S stands for sine. And then also you have to know that the reciprocal function that goes with sine is also positive. So sine and cosecant are positive in quadrant 2, and everything else is negative in quadrant 2. The t in quadrant 3 stands for tangent, and then remember the reciprocal function that goes with tangent is cotangent. So in quadrant 3, tangent and cotangent are positive, everything else is negative. And then finally in quadrant 4, the C stands for cosine. The reciprocal function of cosine is secant. So in quadrant 4, secant and cosecant are positive, everything else is negative. So let's take a look at A first. So I'm going to draw my little chart here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through one function at a time, figure out which quadrants we can narrow it down to, and then when we do the other one, we'll see where they overlap, and that will be our final answer. So our final answer is going to be a quadrant. It's either going to be quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4. And just in case that's something you have forgotten, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. They're given to you in Roman numerals. All right, so let's take a look at part A. So the first thing I want to take a look at is sine is greater than 0. Greater than 0, let me do this over here. Greater than 0 means positive, and less than 0 means negative. So if this tells me that sine is greater than 0, that means I'm looking for where sine is positive. And there are two places where sine is positive. Quadrant 1 where everything is positive, and then quadrant 2 where the S is, because the S stands for sine. All right, so now we have to look at the next one, which is tangent is less than 0. So less than 0 means negative, so we're going to have to do it like a two-step process here. The first step is to figure out where is tangent positive. And tangent would be positive where in quadrant 1 where everything's positive, and in quadrant 3 where there's the t. And then since the check marks are where tangent is positive, I'm going to highlight the other two, because that means that's where tangent is negative. So now I'm going to highlight the places where there is no check mark with blue. And you can see that where the S is in quadrant 2, it got highlighted with both blue and yellow. That means our answer for part A is quadrant 2. And then we're going to do the same process for part B. So I have A, S, T, C. I'm going to look at cosine first. This tells me that cosine is less than 0. That means negative. Since it's negative, we're going to go through and put check marks where it's positive, and then we'll highlight the other two. So cosine would be positive in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4 where the C for cosine is. So that means if I want to highlight where cosine is negative, I'll be highlighting the other two. So where the S is and where the T is. So the things that are yellow are where cosine would be negative. And then we're going to do the same thing for this one. And this one is a little bit tricky because we're not talking about a regular function. We're talking about one of our reciprocal functions. So all you have to remember is that cotangent is, it goes with tangent. It's the same, the signs will be the same as they are for tangent. So let's just think of it as tangent. And I want to know where tangent is positive. So I'm going to highlight the two quadrants where tangent would be positive. That would be quadrant 1 where everything's positive, and then also quadrant 3 where the T is. That stands for tangent. Now I know I've been saying tangent, and on the paper it says cotangent, but the reason I'm talking about tangent is because they're the same. Tangent and cotangent are reciprocal functions, so wherever tangent is positive, so is cotangent. So if you look, quadrant 3 is where the two colors overlapped. I have both yellow and blue. So that means that my final answer for part B is quadrant 3.